Today I'm going to show you how to make these nifty and useful bottles. Stay tuned. Greetings adventurers and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. So I am literally tomorrow going to be heading to Reckoning LARP. And I realized that there's an issue I always have when I go to a LARP that I never ever adequately solve. And that is what to carry my water in. I have all these different things that I can use. None of them are like perfect. I either have my gourd, which I'm afraid to break because they can be quite fragile. I have my mug and my cooksa that I made. You can check out the episodes, but I'll probably link them down below. I can't put them two at once. These are really cool when we're sitting down and drinking, but less so when I'm like running around and need to carry water with me. And honestly, there's a lot of running in the heat in a LARP in armor, and it's real dangerous. So I figured today we would knock out some really easy leather projects and solve this problem simultaneously. All right, this first one I'm gonna do is actually inspired by this image that I found online. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it was like 2 a.m. in the morning. And I was like, how would I make that though? But then I couldn't get back to sleep until I tried. It's a problem, it really is a problem. So just know that the very beginning how-to portion is me just fevered crazy at 2 a.m. in the morning. It's awful. Anyways, the bottle I'm gonna be using for this is this sadly empty whiskey bottle here. It's neat, has a cool shape. You should also know while we're airing my problems, I save every bottle I come across. You never know when they'll be useful and they're all so pretty. I think bottles are really pretty and I save them. There's so many just off camera. We're learning a lot about the weird wild world of me today. Okay, the way I figure this is gonna work is we're gonna wet form leather, like sandwich it around that bottle. Now, perhaps we could use like clamps all the way down. That's where my brain was kind of going. But then I thought of a crazy idea. So yeah, follow me down this rabbit trail. It involves some plywood here. Basically, all I'm gonna do is plop my bottle onto this plywood, and then I trace all along its edge with my pencil. Now here's part of the magic. When you're using your pencil, don't like make up for the fact that the roundness of your pencil moves the tip away from the edge. You actually want it to be a little bit larger than the bottle because leather still has to fit in there. So yeah, don't like compensate for that. Try to keep it as straight up and down as possible. Doing that left me with this nice outline of the bottle. To pop that sucker out, I just drilled through it to give my jigsaw a place to go, and then cut using my line as a guide. And bam, check this out. It is a perfect hole for my bottle. It's like a cartoon bottle ran through a wall and just left a perfect cutout for it. It's awesome. But again, notice that it actually left a little bit of room around the edge of the bottle. Again, very important. Anyways, using the first one to trace out the next one, I made 2 of them exactly the same. I also made sure to sand down those inner edges so that they wouldn't bite into or mar up the leather at all. For my leather, I just have these little scrap pieces of 6 ounce that I put into some hot water until they were all malleable and soft. When you first put it into the water, you're gonna see a bunch of little bubbles coming out. You know it's ready when those bubbles stop coming out. It's kind of dark when you think of it. Anywho, with the leather all soft, all I did was drape it over my bottle and then kind of push the bottle through that opening, which as you can see, pulls it like perfectly into shape. It was working out pretty good. It was a good little fever dream. On the other side, I just laid all that excess flat so that I can then drape the leather over that other side and again, put the other piece of wood into place. Then I just simply put a million little clamps on this thing to hold it all together as tightly as possible. And that was my 2 a.m. adventure. At that point, I was like, well, all right, now it's just gotta dry, so there's nothing else I could do. Then I could finally go to sleep. Damnedest thing. But come the next day when I took it off, look at how slick that is. It is perfectly formed around my bottle. It's great. Not only that, but because I used the hot water and I waited till all the bubbles came out, it actually hardened the leather quite a bit. So now not only is it encasing the bottle, it's adding that extra protection to it, which is exactly what I need. With that all said, I just went ahead and punched 2 holes right kind of in the top corners here, which is so that I can drop these grommets here in. I figure with those locked into place, I'll now have somewhere that I can like dependably hang it off of. So I can either like have 2 straps where I can hang it around my neck or like have it on the side here, or like a single strap and put it on my belt. I don't know, it just gives me options. With that in place, I use my wing divider set to about 1/2 inch and then glide it all along the edge of the bottle so that I had an outline to cut away. This leaves me with this nice little design here and gives me areas that I can either stitch or in my case, drop some rivets in. Now, things I've learned while doing this. I dropped those little, the grommets in there thinking that like I was gonna keep everything together or whatever. In the future, I probably would wait to do that because the whole thing could still come apart. It wasn't coming apart, it was so tightly formed together that I just forgot it could. But I might want to add like glue to the edges or something. I don't know, it just gives me more options. Also, like when I'm dyeing it, it gives me more options in dyeing, right? I could have like finished all the leather off first and then put it together, making sure it was perfect before locking it into place. Just saying. Happy with that though, I again used my wing dividers, this time set to 1 inch, and walked them along the edge so that I knew where I wanted to place all my rivets. Then just went in with my hole punch and punched all along that edge. Finally, I went back in with my knife and just trimmed away any of the excess that was around the rim and the bottom. Though, for the bottom, you see how it kind of scoops in underneath here? That's actually pretty hard, and I think it'll hold the bottle in place. That said, if I left a little bit of extra hanging, I could have wet formed a circle of leather and just jammed it in there and then sewed that around. That would give me like a bottom where I'm sure it won't fall out. I don't think this one's gonna fall out, but it does leave the chance. So if you don't want to take the chance, you can definitely put some kind of bottom on there, or maybe just like a strap that like attaches to the inside on one side, goes around and attaches to the other side. Up to you. I'll roll my dice. I'll report back to you and tell you how it went. Just a heads up, I did go back in and actually remove the leather to just underneath that lip of the opening, with the thought being that I'm gonna dye this leather, so I don't want it to actually come right up against my lips. Like, I'll seal it and stuff afterwards, but like, I don't know. I don't think like actively taking in the dye or touching the dye with my mouth would be a good idea. With this good to go, I actually decided to dye this a Kelly green just because I like the look of it. I also like the look of these nice little round top rivets that I had, that I think really went well with the color of green. Honestly, rigging up a surface that I could use to actually lock these into place was the hardest part. I do think probably like hand sewing around this edge would actually be easier than dropping in the rivets. That was kind of a pain. But you gotta admit, they do look really slick. I'm super proud of that look, that's neat. For the last little additions to this bad boy, I just took the original cork that went into it and drilled a hole straight through the wooden part on the top. Then I used a needle with a piece of like cordage tied to it so that I can thread through that hole nice and easy. Then to lock it in place, I just tied a knot on that end so it couldn't get back out. The other end of that, I just tied to one of those little grommets there. Now I don't have to worry about that cork falling in the middle of anywhere. For one last thing, I did add a little bit of edge coat here. If you go and see like a really nice designer bag or a backpack or something that's leather, you're gonna see almost like a rubbery paint all along the edges. That is an edge coat. It helps protect those edges, make it look nice and more finished. And in my case, because I didn't glue everything together, right, it fills in any of those little cracks where it didn't meet together perfectly. Again, we'll see how it holds up over time, but look at this thing. This is great. It has water in it. It doesn't look like it wants to fall anywhere. And it was super simple. The hardest part of it was done at 2 a.m. in a fever dream. And honestly, that part took me like maybe a half hour. Build time total of me actually doing stuff, not waiting for stuff to dry, maybe like 2 hours on this bad boy. Really cool. I really like this a lot. But then that got me thinking, what if I wanted to change out this bottle, right? I can't. This is designed specifically for this, which is great for water, but if I want to actually carry around like bottle of spirits or something, that gets a little bit more tricky. But luckily, the next design, equally simple, and it's going to allow for us to change out the bottles as we need. For this, I'm using this scrap of 6-ounce leather here. It has a bunch of scratches in it and damage, which was what makes it scrap. But that long kind of tail there is perfect for what I want to use this for. So to get the size, I just grabbed a standard wine bottle and kind of wrapped it around, marking where I'd want to make the cut. Now, if you have it pretty close, like overlapping like this one is, you could just sew that together or like rivet it in place. Nothing saying you can't, I'm thinking of a different design. Basically that long tail that was left over on that scrap piece of leather, I cut right down the middle to make kind of this 1-inch belt hanging down. This is gonna loop back around, which will help hold that bottle in place so it doesn't slide through. And also come up to cover my seam, which honestly I think is a pretty elegant design. I'm kind of proud of that one. There's also enough left over that I can make a little loop in the top to have a place to hang it by. As such though, I didn't want to have that overlap, so I just cut it so that those pieces of leather barely touched each other. Then of course I beveled and slicked the edges and all that. By the way, whenever I'm using leather, if you don't hear me say I then beveled and slicked the edges, you can trust I did. Okay, so next I folded that tail underneath and then marked right where it would land on the very bottom edge of the rest of the leather. Then keeping it in place there, I also marked where it would land on the very top of that leather. That demarks kind of where that seam would be, right? So that's the space I have to play in if I wanted to stitch it, or in my case, again, I'm gonna drop rivets in because I'm lazy. And again, using the same trick, I just mark where my holes would go every single inch. Then punch them out with ye olde hole puncher. You'll see I did them in 2 rows here, because again, we got 2 other pieces of leather that are folding in, right? So each like side of rivets will hold just one of those sides of leather that are coming together. I then kind of positioned it on one of the edges right where it would go, and used an awl to mark the first hole. From there, since I have that wing divider still set up to kind of make the marks, it was easy to like put all the marks on those edges exactly where they'd go, and then punch those out as well. Now I just know everything matches exactly how I want them to, so that that little tail will hold everything together. I also put 2 holes in the very end of that little tail because remember, I want to loop it over to make this kind of hoop here to hang it off of. There is a problem though, because since you can kind of change this thing out, it does mean it can just kind of fall out of the top, which it's not like a huge problem. Just don't turn it over and like shake it or whatever. But still, I want to make this thing so you can carry it around if you want to. So I figured we just got to put like a little something right on the top there. So again, I used my wing divider and this time set it so that it was large enough to go all the way around the neck of the bottle. And I used that to mark out a circle, which I then cut out. I then just kind of made it an oblong shape here so that it would fit nicely around the shoulders of the bottle. Cool, with that good to go, I decided to hit all of my pieces with this light brown dye. Once that dried, I started locking everything into place using some of these rapid rivets here. Now to lock these in, I actually have this little anvil I can slide it onto, but tubes like this can be tricky. I went to a scrapyard and I found like a tine from a forklift that I often use. I'll just kind of put it onto my table with some clamps and have it hanging off so I can do stuff like this with it. But yeah, you might have to get creative if you're trying to do a tube like that. Honestly, this probably would have been another one that sewing would have been easy. I just don't like sewing. With that all locked in though, look at how slick this is. The bottle fits in absolutely perfectly. Like perfectly enough where like air pushes out and it kind of vacuums its way in. It's genuinely a little tricky to slide back out after the fact. Now this top part has to somehow lock into place here, and that's where I had inspiration from those little gift bags, which is what this is kind of modeled off of, little gift bags for wine. In that when you have the little handle for them, the act of pulling the handle locks the bottle into place because of the way the rope usually is. So I wanted to mirror that. To do so, I actually grabbed some of these D-ring assemblies I had that I was originally going to use on my armor and I just didn't end up needing. As you can see, I locked these on with some rivets onto that little top piece and mirrored where they land on the side of the bottle. These I just connected with some rope. Now this gives me that effect that every time I pull it, it just kind of locks itself into place. Look at how cool that looks. It goes on my shoulder, it stays into place. When I want to take it out, this whole like top assembly just removes, but stays intact like it can't get lost. You replace the bottle and you close it back up and you're good to go. I am, like, of the 2 of these, this one I'm gonna be able to carry around all the time, but this one I could see using like as a Christmas gift or something. Do something nice like paint it on the sides here or whatever. Replace the rope with something nicer. Honestly, it's the only one I had around. But look at that, that's really kind of sleek. I genuinely, I would see this and I'd buy it. I like that a lot. Anyways, thank you for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed what I did here today, I want you to give me some of that like it love, and don't forget to subscribe so you know when I release new content. All right, that's all I've got going on today. I've got to go on an adventure. In the meantime, though, keep leveling up, you. You made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that, and it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Another fantastic way to support this channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon members, and we could not do this without them. It's because of them we're able to like sustain my bottle habit and get all the leather we need. Extra special thanks to our high tier Grandmaster Patreon level, Froggy, Dragon Designs, and Yuri Sancho. If you like what we do here enough to support us, consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Otherwise, you can check out one of these videos here that YouTube thinks you'd like, and that helps out a lot too. I have all I need for my trip. Nothing more is required. Just walking around noodle LARP with a bottle, that's a quick way to get arrested. Adventure!